Welcome to another update on the developing tropical weather scene via the Cayman Hurricane Centre. And with the details, here's Adam.
Thank you, David, and thank all of you for watching. Yep, we are discussing the tropical scene as it is in the Atlantic, really kicking off. Um, we'll be discussing about 91L in just a second, but upon some requests, and I thought I'd oblige, to discuss a little bit about some of the other systems out there and have a little bit more visuals on such. So first we'll get on with Hurricane Gert, which as of the 11 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time advisory was located at 40.1 north, 58.4 west, moving east-northeast at 37 miles per hour. Minimum pressure of 967, maximum winds at 105. This is Gert as you see here on your map, and just going into the forecast for Hurricane Gert. Gert is not really expected to do too much more in strengthening. It may strengthen just a slight bit more before it starts to weaken off and then eventually transition into an extratropical system, maybe eventually becoming a sort of windstorm for possibly the United Kingdom. But yep, this hurricane, again, moving further out to sea with very non-existent tropical threats to land, with the only exceptions of larger swells that had occurred off the east coast of the United States and the west coast of Bermuda. Other than that, no threats from this system and no future threats from this system to any land whatsoever. So from here, we'll just go on and have a look. This is the satellite imagery of Hurricane Gert. Definitely see that the system is already starting to deteriorate from how it had looked earlier. Earlier, it looked fairly impressive, nice, decent eye, very circular, fairly decent system for this far north. But again, no real threat to land. The other area that I would mention is also Invest Area 92L, which is just to the east or east-northeast or slightly north of due east of 91L. Out in the central main development region. That will be heading off to a west-northwesterly direction. Maybe some impacts to the northern Leeward Islands in the future, maybe 5 days out or so. Plenty of time to watch and see how that system goes on. But for this evening, the system hasn't been doing too great. The convection, the thunderstorms has really sort of diminished some through the evening as we got through the peak of their middle minimum and continuing on as such. Not really taking it very well. As you can see, whatever remaining convection is pretty much off to its west and sort of weak, blowing off. Definitely not as impressive as it was, say, this morning and the past couple of days. Very little in the way of convection building on this. And there is a bit of spin down in the lower levels, more so in the mid levels, and this is why you're seeing mostly on the satellite imagery here. Again, whatever left of the strongest of convection is off on the northwest side, whilst system is off to here. And there's dry air to the north and to the northeast of the system, and it's probably impeding on some of the development there. Just to give you the exact sort of position on that, as of the 00 Zulu time update, it was located at 14.3, 38.5 west, and again moving west-northwest. We'll have to watch this over time. Not really looking too great on development at this point, even though the National Hurricane Center does give this area a 40% chance over the next 5 days of actually trying to become something. So from there we will move on to finally the area which will likely cause the most amount of threat for any land mass in the short to medium term, and that would be Invest Area 91L, that is to the west of 92L and is heading towards the Eastern Caribbean, located about a little over 600 miles east of Barbados, moving towards the west. And this system has survived through diurnal minimum and is actually building quite nicely, has actually been building those thunderstorms as we pass through, and as we go forward through the night going into early morning and go through diurnal maximum, we will likely see those storms continue to build. Circulation at the low levels very, very good, as we saw through the transitioning from the evening to the night. Definitely see that circulation pop there, and since sundown there's been a lot of popping of the convection of the thunderstorms. So here is the system here, as you see on satellite. At the 00 Zulu time it was at 13.5, 50.4. Since then it's a little bit further to the west, likely around 13, 5, 51, 5, 6, thereabout. You could definitely see a new burst of convection, new burst of thunderstorms developing pretty much near or the center of circulation, and fairly decent convective mass, a little bit better than 92L, and some banding features that has been noted. Also, you can't really see so well, but here is the island of Barbados. That is heading closer and closer to the island of Barbados, and again, this will likely impact the island of Barbados, as well as impacting areas such as St. Vincent, the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, maybe as far north as Guadeloupe, would get affected by the system. At the present time, Barbados had issued a severe weather statement for the island of Barbados. This could potentially be up to tropical storm watch or warning, as the system is doing fairly well, and if it continues to do so, we could very well be likely seeing a tropical depression or a tropical storm into tomorrow. There is a recon mission that is expected to take off around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time. It'd be taking off from forward operating base at St. Croix for the U.S. Air Force 53rd Recon, and they will be flying into the system, finding out if the system has indeed intensified to that of a tropical depression or tropical storm intensity. So it'll be one to watch, one that we'll be keeping a very close eye on. After it moves through the islands there, it'll probably continue west to west-northwest track, and islands in the central and western Caribbean parts of Central America will need to keep a close eye on this. Just showing you here the forecast guidance for 91L. As you can see, it's the models have shifted slightly bit to the north compared to the previous run, and again the models almost for 2 days, nearly 2 days now, have been kind of bouncing a bit north or south or north or south with each run. And I think eventually, especially when we get that recon flying in there and that data gets input into models, that the models will get a better handle on such. There's one thing to take in consideration, though, is that depending on how strong the system gets before it gets to the islands, and how strong it would be as it traverses across the Caribbean, will sort of help to determine where the track would be. Again, a stronger system would track much further to the north, while a weaker system would want to track much further to the south. Again, if we get this thing as a tropical storm before making its way through the eastern islands, then good chance that things should allow it to intensify further throughout the Caribbean, and you could be looking at a stronger system with a much more northerly track. Or if it's only a tropical depression or even not developed into a tropical depression, then you're looking at a much weaker track and a much weaker system, and then the track would go towards, say, Nicaragua, Honduras, Belize. And again, northern track probably take you through Jamaica, parts of the Cayman area, and then the Yucatan or Yucatan Channel. We'll see how things progress through the night and into tomorrow, and then again, with the hurricane hunters going in, we'll also keep you abreast of that information as it comes out. Just to give you how everything looks in kind of an X-ray view, this is the low-level vorticity, and some say that the use of this as sort of the X-ray of a system kind of gives you how the internals of things look. And so this is the latest update, and as you can see very clearly up here, Hurricane Gert, very strong vorticity, and that there a little bit of a tail starting to form off there. This should eventually weaken and move out as it transitions into an extratropical and possibly merge with a frontal boundary as it moves off. So again, not too much of a worry. Invest 91L here in the main development region. This is the western vorticity maximum in the main development region of the tropical Atlantic, and behind that 92L. Then behind that is the other system that the National Hurricane Center is watching that has the potential of possibly becoming Invest 93L soon, or later within the next few days or so, depending on how this thing takes off. Also take note of is a tropical wave moving through the eastern Caribbean. Vorticity has picked up a little bit on this wave, however, not really expecting too much in the way of development on this system, on this tropical wave, as up-level winds aren't too great in front of the system. Anyway, it should continue off towards the west to west-northwest, impacting the Greater Antilles. But Invest 91 has definitely gotten itself a lot better in terms of its vorticity. Still quite round, decent vorticity. 92L has similar vorticity. It's somewhat round, and it is a little bit weaker than Invest 91. So again, this would probably be our dominant feature for the next few days. Still keeping an eye on this and the other system behind. So in terms of conditions ahead and what we could be looking forward for this system, well, here's the wind shear. And, earlier today and earlier over the past few days, there was some concern about the upper level winds probably not being too favorable in the eastern and central Caribbean, and things may not, work out too well for this system. However, to take note of, there is an upper level anticyclone centered on top of Invest 91L. It's doing quite well. It's keeping the shear levels low, 5 to 10 knots, and that will be moving in tandem with the system. Also, if you remember, I've mentioned on several updates about an upper level anticyclone to the west of 91L, and that has also rebuilt up. It had weakened down some, but now it's rebuilt back, and it's pushing further and further west into the Caribbean. And as you can see, it's definitely pushing this wall of shear, which was originally more centered over the eastern islands, has now been pushing it further and further to the west and to the north by some. The upper level low that's associated with this upper level troughiness that extends out through the Atlantic through a couple of upper level lows. This one is moving off towards the west northwest as well. So it is clearing out the higher shear levels in the Caribbean, and that will continue to do so. And the new ship's guidance also suggesting that shear will be on the low side for this system. So that is a plus factor for development for the system as it continues on. And as it continues to build that convective mass, the moisture that will build around that will also help to protect it. There is some dry air to the north. However, as this convective mass builds, that will moisten the area and should keep it good. The only probable limiting factor would probably be the fast movement, especially as it moves through the eastern Caribbean. This area is known as the Caribbean graveyard, where systems, if they are weak or haven't developed yet, they tend to either remain weak or dissipate as they move through the area because of the fast trade winds through there. Not really seeing this as being too much of an issue, especially if the system does indeed become a tropical storm before the islands. This will have lesser of an impact to the system. And of course, this has actually been slowing in its forward movement over the past day or so now. So if it continues to do so, this may not be as much of an issue as originally thought. So with that being said, conditions starting to look a bit more favorable than before. So the intensity guidance is starting to pick up on the intensity. Before it dropped it down, said a maybe tropical storm, maybe weak hurricane. Now it's starting to pick up a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. And again, Recon, when they fly tomorrow, will be putting more data into into the model guidance, and we'll get better and better forecast as put. So the other thing, yes there, David?
Okay, thanks, Adam. Currently on the screen, Adam was just talking about intensity. I've just got the intensity model via the Tropical Tidbits website, and the ship model, which is Adam's favourite one, is looking at a high range Cat 2. And the HWFI is just a little bit higher than the ship model. They're not quite on the Cat 3. So just briefly, with 91L becoming a hurricane and considering the conditions, what intensity could it become?
Right. Well, again, ship's not necessarily my favorite model, but it is a useful tool when you want to get the idea of the environmental conditions that could occur. And again, because the ship's model is showing more favored conditions, it does show a more stronger system. The HWRF or its other varieties, such as the HWFI and so on and so forth, sometimes they can be a little bit out there at times. However, I will credit this that HWRF did predict girth fairly well. It did over exaggerate just a little bit, but overall it didn't do too bad on girth, so I will give it that. Um, the idea of it becoming a hurricane, I think, is still there. Again, it just really depends on how strong the system gets before it reaches the Eastern Caribbean, and then how conditions are in the Caribbean and how this system either strengthens, maintains, or weakens as it moves through the Caribbean. Looking at how things are, it'll probably either sustain its intensity through the Eastern Caribbean, maybe start to pick up in the Central and Western Caribbean, or if it's strong enough, it will continue through the Caribbean and continue to intensify as conditions would probably be a bit better going on forward. So again, it's wide variety of suggestions, anything from say tropical depression up to a hurricane. It's out there, and again, weaker system, much more further to the south track, would probably go Nicaragua, Honduras. A much more stronger system would track further north, impacting areas such as Jamaica, the Cayman Basin, maybe the Yucatan, probably even as far north as the Yucatan Channel. Not out of the realm yet. So we'll have to wait. We'll have to see how that plays out. There's this graphic that I want to put up here, and this is the oceanic heat content. I've mentioned this on several videos and several updates, and that's another key factor that will play into how Invest 91 will intensify. Again, there's warm sea surface temperatures itself in the Caribbean, areas in the Northwest Caribbean up to 30, 31 degrees Celsius, and definitely warm enough to support yourself a decent tropical system. But when you add the oceanic heat content or the tropical cyclone heat potential to that, you get a bit more of a better picture. And again, the area throughout the whole Caribbean is pretty much favorable to allow development of a decent tropical storm or upwards. As we get through the central Caribbean, we're talking about the amount to be able to support a weak hurricane. And as we get into the west central, western Caribbean, talking about south of western Haiti, onwards towards the west and west-northwest, we're talking about some very high heat potentials here, and very much high enough to definitely support a major hurricane for sure. Especially, say, these white areas, these pinkish white areas just south and to the west of the Cayman region, as well as south of the western tip of Cuba, east of the Yucatan tip, Cozumel, Cancun, and north of Honduras. Definitely high heat potentials. And again, if the system is able to track through this area, that could be a concern, because it will be going through these areas and it will be getting more energy to work with. Again, if it's weaker, it'll move through these more cooler, lower heat content areas and not really intensify as much. So again, it's a bit of a jumpy, guessy game here with the models jumping back and forth. No real exact player picture yet, and when recon flies in, it'll start getting better. But I still think the picture will be still fuzzy as we go forward. Maybe a little less bounce north and south than we have now, but we'll wait and see. Again, areas that will be impacted and in the immediate term would be the islands of Barbados, St. Vincent the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, and possibly Guadeloupe. That is in the short term. We're even starting to see that the impacts probably starting for Barbados and say maybe Martinique and St. Lucia starting late Thursday, so late tomorrow going into Friday, and then beyond that point, possibly the island of Jamaica would start to feel some of the impacts, say maybe Sunday or Monday, and then depending on, again, how far north or how far south, talking about the northeastern tip of Nicaragua, Honduras, the Cayman area, and beyond that. We'll have to wait and see how things go again. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it from me at this point. I'll be back with another update tomorrow and also give you an update on what Recon finds. And maybe tomorrow we'll be talking about Tropical Storm Franklin, or if not, Tropical Depression number 9, I believe. So, again, stay tuned, and I will keep you updated.